So let's go.
On a hidden island.
We have so much here.
During his vacation in Thailand, Richard embarks on a journey to an island rumored to be a secluded beach paradise. However, he soon finds himself in a nightmare beyond his imagination. Initially, the American teenager Richard travels to Bangkok, the capital of Thailand, in search of passion, adventure, and eternal happiness. He believes the traditional travel experience, where people fly thousands of miles to watch movies or stay in comfortable hotels, does not bring true happiness. His attention is drawn to a passionate French girl who captivates his heart, but she is not alone. She is with her French fiancé. Feeling angry about being alone on his journey, Richard convinces himself that true happiness lies in having a romantic partner by his side. One sleepless night, disturbed by the sounds of love from the neighboring room, a strange man named Daffy appears, yelling incomprehensible words and cursing everyone around him. Daffy asks Richard for a cigarette and starts telling him about a secret, enchanting beach on an isolated island, surrounded by a lake and mountains on all sides. It is said that this beach grants true happiness to those who visit it. Daffy shares a story about a group of people who once came to the island seeking happiness, but they soon descended into addiction and illness. Daffy tried to advise them to leave, but they refused. Concerned, Richard asks Daffy if he has mental issues, but Daffy only laughs and walks away. The next day, Richard finds a map on his door indicating the location of the beach. When he looks for Daffy, he discovers that Daffy has committed suicide by slitting his wrists. Grief-stricken, Richard decides to turn Daffy's tragedy into a joyful journey. He convinces the French girl Françoise and her fiancé Etienne to join him on a quest to the island of happiness. Richard finds himself more attracted to Françoise than to Etienne. Etienne warns that they cannot directly access the island since it lies within a protected national area. Instead, they plan to take a boat to a nearby island and swim from there to the fabled island of happiness. Richard interacts with some young Americans staying nearby. During their conversation, they share stories about the mythical secret beach and how they've heard about it from many people. When they ask Richard if he believes in the legend, he dismisses it as just tales to impress tourists. Before leaving, Richard draws a copy of the map and leaves it for the Americans out of fear of the unknown. The next morning, despite their apprehensions and fear of drowning, Richard, Françoise, and Etienne decide to swim to the island of happiness. They finally arrive at the mysterious beach and are shocked to find an entire area planted with marijuana. Richard soon discovers they are not alone on the island. A group of armed men guards the plantation. They try to escape unnoticed, but a monkey blocks their way. Luckily, Richard acts quickly and sprays water on the monkey, scaring it off. They then face a new obstacle, a towering waterfall they cannot cross. Overwhelmed with despair, Etienne blames Richard for their predicament, and an argument ensues. Suddenly, Françoise decides to leap over the waterfall and succeeds without injury. She encourages Richard and Etienne to follow her, and they jump after her. Out of nowhere, a mysterious man appears, looking as if he came from Atlantis. He tells them he will lead them to a secret place to meet a woman named Sal. Richard expects to find a group of people living in a cave or a tent, but to his surprise, they discover an entire community living in eternal happiness. Sally was the leader or founder of this community. She took the map from Richard and asked him about Daffy, who had drawn it. He told her that Daffy had committed suicide in his hotel room after leaving the map for him. She explained that Daffy had been one of the founders of their community, but had succumbed to despair and illness. Sally then asked if anyone else had seen the map or knew anything about it. Everyone, including Richard, denied it. She emphasized the importance of keeping their secret forever and then burned the map. The group began to enjoy their time, heading to the beach Daffy had described. The scenery was breathtaking, like a desktop wallpaper. Richard finally felt he had found the eternal happiness he had been searching for. The community lived a self-sufficient life, growing their own food and making everything they needed. However, they would periodically send someone to Thailand to sell some of the marijuana they cultivated and buy rice and other necessities. Richard befriended 3 Finns, Stan, Carl, and Max, who taught him how to fish. The only person Richard didn't get along with was Sally's husband. That night, they celebrated their arrival. Richard felt overwhelming happiness, as if he were in paradise, but one thing was missing: love. Sitting alone, he was soon joined by Françoise, who invited him to go to the sea with her. On the beach, she confessed that she knew about his feelings for her and admitted she liked him too. However, she explained that she couldn't spend time with him because of her relationship. He asked if she had told Etienne about her feelings and she said no. She then suggested they watch the glowing plants in the water. They dived together and she confessed her love for him. Their confessions continued outside the water, where they vowed to keep what happened between them a secret. Later, Etienne told Richard that he knew what had happened between him and Françoise. Confused, Richard listened as Etienne added, with sadness, that he wanted Françoise to be happy, even if it meant being with someone else. Everything seemed to be going well for Richard. He had found the happiness he was searching for and love with Francoise. The next morning, Sally gathered everyone and announced that someone needed to volunteer to travel with her to the town of Campania for supplies. No one volunteered, so Sally chose Richard. Excited about the trip, Richard anticipated drinking a cold beer in an air-conditioned place and enjoying himself. But from the moment he arrived in town, he felt an overwhelming urge to return. He realized that if their secret was exposed, people from the town would come and bring chaos, turning the island into an ordinary place like anywhere else. Sitting with Sally in an air-conditioned spot, drinking beer, she asked him how he felt about returning to the real world. He admitted it got worse each time and that life in the city was not what he once imagined. At that moment, the Americans approached Richard. They told the girls, "This is Richard, the one with the map." Sally suddenly froze upon hearing the word map and looked at Richard in confusion. Trying to escape the situation, he lied, telling them, "It's just a myth. There's no such beach." Losing his temper, he angrily added, "I told you there's no beach, you idiots. Leave now." Later, during dinner, Sally asked him if he had told them about the beach. He admitted that he had. She then asked if they had a copy of the map, to which he replied no. Feeling relieved, Richard thought he had avoided trouble, but then Sally handed him a key and asked him to prepare her bed. At that moment, Richard realized he would have to pay the price for her silence, and the cost would be steep. As daylight broke, the journey back began, with Richard believing he had reached an understanding with Sally. After distributing all the supplies he had purchased, he saved the last item for Francoise, a camera, knowing her love for photography. However, Francoise seemed distant. When he asked her why, she replied that people were saying Sally liked him. Richard vehemently denied anything had happened, but was taken aback when Francoise asked him to swear. Not wanting to ruin the moment of their return to the island, Richard swore on his honor that nothing had happened, and Francoise believed him. He tried to put the shopping trip and the map he had drawn out of his mind. Richard returned to the idyllic life on the island, but paradise wasn't eternal. A few days later, Richard heard screaming and discovered that a shark had attacked the Finns, injuring two of them. One had suffered a fatal bite to his abdomen and died, while the other lost his leg. Desperate, they begged Sally to get a doctor, but she refused, offering two choices: either leave for the hospital and risk exposing their location, or stay on the island and face their fate. No one objected to Sally's ultimatum. They spent a sorrowful night on the beach, which had previously been a place of joy. Though everyone tried to return to their usual cheerful lives, Max's agonized cries of pain made it impossible. They decided to move him into the jungle, away from the beach, so they wouldn't hear his screams or feel guilty. Etienne opposed this decision, calling them animals and pigs, but no one responded. Once Max was out of earshot, the group felt relieved and resumed their carefree routines. Life on the beach made it easy to forget, but forgetting wasn't always simple. Richard began dreaming of Daffy, the map maker, who appeared to him, saying, "Get up, Richard, run away." Richard woke to Sally calling him. She took him into the jungle and, through binoculars, showed him his American friends on a nearby island. She reminded him of the farmers who didn't want anyone else on their land. Angry at Richard, she scolded him for drawing the map and lying to her. She instructed him to wait for the Americans, take their map, and drive them away. That night, Francoise hit him and called him a liar, accusing him of cheating on her with Sally and Campania. Sally had told everyone. Francoise pointed out that, at least, Sally was honest, unlike Richard, who had deceived her and lied under oath. He tried to explain himself, but she told him there was nothing he could say to make her forgive his betrayal. She left him, leaving Richard alone. Richard sank into despair and sorrow. The further he drifted from his secretive community, the stronger his desire to abandon it grew. The jungle began to play tricks on his mind. He saw it as his kingdom, the Americans as the enemy, and the farmers as its defenders. He set himself a mission to retrieve the map from the Americans. He started setting traps in the jungle to escape the farmers if they chased him. The next day, the two young men and two young women arrived on the island. Like Richard before them, they headed straight for the marijuana field. When the farmers discovered them, they surrounded them. Language barriers caused tension to escalate, and one farmer shot and killed one of the young men. The remaining three tried to flee, but the farmers killed two more. The last woman, who carried the map, managed to escape. Richard tried to block her path and scare her so the farmers would kill her. However, when her blood splattered on his face, he snapped out of the hallucination he was experiencing and fled without taking the map. Richard led one of the farmers into a trap, causing him to fall, and then Richard escaped. He jumped and made his way to the beach where he waited for Francoise. When she emerged, he tried to calm her down. After hearing what happened, they went together to their friend Etienne, who was still in the jungle with Max, gravely injured from the shark attack. Richard recounted everything to them: the death of the four people, the search for the map, and the farmers' threat to expel them from the island. Richard realized that the three of them needed to escape together, just as they had arrived. However, Etienne refused to leave Max behind. They discovered that Max's injuries had led to gangrene and that death was imminent. Richard told them to wait for him on the beach while he took care of Max. He decided to end Max's suffering by killing him. As he stepped out of the tent, one of the farmers attacked attacked him, knocking him unconscious. When Richard woke up, he found himself in a hut, overhearing the head farmer holding the map taken from the 4 dead Americans. The head farmer told them he never wanted to harm anyone, but they were endangering his livelihood. The cultivation of cannabis, which supported his family in Thailand. He reminded them that he had warned them before. If anyone else came to the island, he would expel them and kill those who resisted. Pointing at Etienne and Francoise, he then turned to Sally, accusing her of drawing the map. He ordered them to leave the island, forget Thailand, and never return. Sally refused, defiantly stating, "No, we're not leaving. This island is our home too, a place we built with our own hands." Richard tried to reason with her, urging them to leave to protect their lives, but Sally screamed at him, "Shut up! This is all your fault because you drew that map." At that moment, the farmer realized Richard was the one who had drawn the map and informed the Americans about the island. He blamed Richard further, saying, "You're the one who snuck into the jungle, set the traps, and brought people to the island." The farmer pulled out his gun and gave Sally a choice. They could stay on the island, but only if Sally killed Richard, the root of their problems. Sally took the gun, despite the group's objections and their refusal to accept the idea of killing Richard. Richard tried to calm Sally, begging her not to kill him, but Sally pointed the gun at him. He said to her, "You can't kill me. This time is different. Max dying in the jungle, and the 4 people killed today. Everyone needs to see the price they pay for their so-called secret paradise." Without hesitation, Sally fired the gun. Amid everyone's screams, it became clear that the farmer's gun was loaded with blanks. The farmer smirked slyly, having successfully revealed Sally's true nature to everyone. His plan worked. Everyone left the island. Richard felt immense relief at surviving and escaped the place, now aware of the truth, that their happiness had been corrupt and tainted with blood. Sally, however, refused to leave. Her faith in the island was so strong that nothing could shake it. The others returned to their homes and countries, burdened by guilt over their sins. Each sought to make amends and rediscover what they had lost from their old lives. Though they could never forget what had happened, they learned to adapt and move on. Richard, meanwhile, still believed in eternal happiness, but realized it wasn't tied to any specific place. Instead, it was a genuine feeling of joy in a single moment of life, and if you found that moment, it would last forever. At that moment, Richard received a message with a group photo of them on the beach. Written on it were the words, "The Parallel World. With love, Francoise." Richard knew then that he had found his eternal moment of happiness. Are you ready for the next film? Subscribe to the channel to get notified as soon as it's released. Don't forget to turn on notifications. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.